breathe, drink water, and pray. That's what my pops used to say to me all the time. And I would be like, Pops, why are you oversimplifying everything? But he would say, breathe, drink water, and pray. And as I woke up this morning, I got a chance to be able to do a little routine, move my body, read a little something, write a little something. And the song came on from Maverick City, and it just said, breathe. So it's amazing because what my pops taught me years and years ago that I was fighting all the time, when we get to a point where we're stressed, where we have anxiety, where we have depression, where we have all these things that are piling up on us, especially like now, we're at the end of the month, what God calls us to do is simply breathe. Let's get this party started.
Nothing more on my mind. I got two shines, so every day I grind. Work in the morning, work in the evening. We's achieving, cause we believing. It's for certain, we put the work in. We ain't stopped just because it's hurting. Right before your eyes, so it's coming to no surprise. The takeover is televised. Over and over and over again. Make no mistake, we continue to win. Defeat never known, cause I will not lose. They wanna mimic my moves, but can't walk in my shoes.
Breathe, drink water, and pray. But let's focus on that first one. Breathe. I mean, this is something that my pops would tell me all the time. I would go through a challenge, he would say, breathe. I would go through a success, he would say, breathe. I would go through whatever I was going through at the time, and he would say, breathe. And for me, it was incredible because I always wanted to complicate it up. I always thought that he was oversimplifying, but what I've realized throughout this time is that I was the one that was overcomplicating everything. And in Proverbs 30, which is the corresponding proverb for the corresponding day here in Inchstones, and let me just describe what an inchstone is. It's a small little thing as opposed to focusing on the milestones. We just focus on the little tiny inchstones. And this podcast, The Vibe, has 3 different shows. One is Inchstones, like what I'm doing today. Number 2, I have a show that I interview some of the most iconic people in the world. And they all give advice to my kids by name. And then I have one that I go live and call my friends randomly, and they have no idea that they're on the podcast, but they find out when they're on the podcast. So today with Inchstones, we go through the corresponding proverb, corresponding day, because we want to I wanted to take 3,000-year-old wisdom and see if it was applicable today. Every single thing that I see in life is principle-based. Every single thing, the seed time and harvest, and, like what you reap, then you'll sow. And, all these things are most of the time principle-based, but we have the tendency to overcomplicate them. And my pops just took, and he would always, in my head, oversimplify, but now I realize he was just simply making my life a lot simpler. Breathe. 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 It's something that I heard from my mentors, something that I heard from my mentor, Stephanie Kachelski. She told me, she watched the episode of the podcast. She was like, you're going rapid fire. Just breathe. Set back. As we go through Proverbs 30 today, if you are weary, breathe. That's in verse 1. If you have strength but not understanding, breathe. That's verse number 2. In verse number 3, if you don't have wisdom or knowledge, breathe. If you don't have all the answers and cannot see his plan for your life, breathe. God is flawless. This is in verse 5. Breathe. He doesn't need your help. Sometimes I jump in and I'm like, okay, God, you got this part, but I got that part. I'm going to pray for this part, but I'm going to do this part. And what God is saying is, I'm flawless. Breathe. And when you breathe in, then you'll take me in. You'll take all the goodness in. And when you breathe out, let all that stuff go. Breathe. In verse 7 through 9, do you have too much and you're bored? Or do you not have enough and you're stressed? Breathe. Are you speaking ill of someone in verse 10? Breathe. Think about it. Think about it before you move on to the next place. When your ego flares up and your words are sharp and you're full of pride, breathe. In verse 11 through 14, it drives this home. In verse 15 and 16, when you can't get enough and you have the tendency to just keep comparing yourself to every single other person in the world and every single other thing, and I fall victim to this, breathe. When you're disrespectful to your parents or you're disrespectful to your kids. See, yesterday I was disrespectful to my daughter. I took her to school and I raised my voice and I was so angry and, it was just silly. And if I would have taken a breath, I wouldn't have had to repair the situation. Now, luckily, my daughter is very, very forgiving. But I went home and I said, I'm sorry. I messed up as a dad. I'm a bad dad. I was a bad dad today. And she looked at me and she was like, you're not a bad dad. Forgive and then move on. And that's from a 15-year-old. So thank you, baby. I appreciate you when you're disrespectful to your parents or to your kids. In verse 17, it says, breathe. In verse 18, 19, and 20, when you're flying high, when you're in the valley, when you're in the eye of the storm, or straying from the path, breathe. It'll help you to be able to get back on track. You can fill yourself with love. You can fill yourself with grace and realize that where you're at is not where you're going to stay. Where you're at, if you're low, is not where you're going to stay. If you're in the eye of the storm and everything is going crazy, it's not where you're going to stay. And if you've done something that's not the greatest thing in the world, it's not where you're going to stay. So simply breathe. When you see others do wrong and seem to be rewarded, this one is the hardest one for me. Because when you're doing right and you don't get rewarded, then you look to your left or look to your right. And again, this is comparison, but you see somebody and things are going well for them and you know they ain't doing right. Just breathe. Because when you do the right things for the right reasons, the right things will turn out, but it won't be in the time that you think. It'll be His purpose, His plan, and His timing. When insecurity is high, gives way to pride, and fires up your ego, breathe. In verse 29 through 31, it drove that home. And as we finish today, in all things breathe and know that it is His purpose, His plan, and His timing. But it's your choice to just breathe. I just simplified my pops. My pops said, breathe, drink water, and pray. And I used to think, Pops, that's an oversimplification. There's no way that all those things can work if you just simply do those three. But what God said today is, I want you to simplify what Pops said. I want you to think that he didn't oversimplify. You were overcomplicating. And I want you to simplify what he was talking about. And I just want you to focus right now. And I want you to breathe, because you're exactly where you need to be at the exact right time. And if God needed you someplace else, He would have you there. You are the greatest. So act accordingly. That's Proverbs 30. I appreciate you. My name is Kelly Cardenas, and I'm officially off the hot seat. Peace, love, and soul.
Nothing more on my mind. I got to shine, so every day I grind. Work in the morning, work in the evening. We's achieving, cause we believing. It's for certain, we put the work in. We ain't stopped just because it's hurting. Right before your eyes, so it's coming to no surprise. The takeover is televised. Over and over and over again. Make no mistake, we continue to win. Defeat never known, cause I will not lose. They wanna mimic my moves, but can't walk in my shoes.